My girlfriend said I was holding her back from the life she wanted. I apologized for loving simply, let her go without resistance, and moved on. She later reached out when freedom didn't feel as empowering without someone who truly cared. I can't do this anymore. I feel like I'm suffocating. Those were the words that hit me on a random Tuesday evening, standing in our kitchen with takeout containers still warm on the counter. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. I'm 29. She was 27. We'd been together for 4 years. What do you mean? I asked, though part of me already knew. She ran her fingers through her hair, that nervous habit she'd always had. This life, our life, it's too small. Small. The word hung there between us like smoke. I don't understand, I said, even though I was starting to. You're happy with this? She gestured around our apartment. Working your steady job, coming home, watching shows, weekend farmers markets. You're content with simple. I thought we both were. She shook her head. I convinced myself I was. But I'm not. I want more. I want to travel, to take risks, to actually live. And every day I spend here, I feel like I'm wasting my 20s. I set down the fork I'd been holding. So what are you saying? I'm saying that I love you, but I don't think I can be the person I want to be while I'm with you. There it was. The real truth underneath everything. You think I'm holding you back? I said quietly. Not intentionally. You're amazing. You're kind and stable and everything anyone could want in a partner. But that's the problem. You make it too easy to settle. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I barely recognized. When had she started seeing our life together as settling? What do you want me to say? I asked. I don't know. Fight for us maybe. Tell me I'm wrong. But I wasn't going to do that. I'd learned a long time ago that you can't convince someone to want the life you're living. You can't argue someone into loving you the way you love them. I'm not going to hold you back, I said. If you need to go, then go. She blinked. Just like that. What else is there? You've clearly made up your mind. You're not asking for permission. You're asking for, I don't even know what. Validation. I thought you'd at least try to change my mind. Why? So you can resent me for it later? So you can spend the next however many years wondering what you missed out on. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I love you, I continued. But I'm not going to beg you to stay in a life you've decided isn't enough. That's not fair to either of us. The conversation didn't last much longer after that. She packed a bag that night and went to stay with her friend Hannah. Said she needed space to think, even though we both knew there wasn't anything left to think about. 3 days later, she came back for the rest of her things. I helped her carry boxes to her car. We were painfully polite about it, like strangers helping each other move furniture. I'm sorry, she said when the last box was loaded. I know this isn't what you wanted. It's okay, I said, and meant it. I'd rather you be honest than miserable. You're really not going to fight for this. I looked at her standing there, waiting for me to give her some grand gesture, some movie moment where I declared my love and convinced her to stay. But that's not how real life works. I already told you, I said. I'm not going to convince you to want a life with me. You deserve to find whatever it is you're looking for. And I deserve someone who doesn't see loving me as settling. She flinched at that. Take care of yourself, I said, and walked back into the apartment. I didn't watch her drive away. The next few weeks were strange. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I'd catch myself looking over to tell her something, only to remember she wasn't there. But I didn't call, didn't text. I threw myself into work, started going to the gym more, picked up the guitar I'd abandoned years ago. My friends were supportive, in that awkward way people are when they don't know what to say. My coworker David tried to set me up with his wife's sister. I politely declined. You need to get back out there, man, he said. I'm fine, I told him. Just need some time. And I was fine mostly. Sure, there were moments. Finding her hair tie in the bathroom drawer. Seeing a show she would have liked. Walking past the coffee shop where we used to get breakfast on Sundays. But I wasn't falling apart. I was just adjusting. About a month after she left, I ran into her friend Hannah at the grocery store. Hey, she said, looking uncomfortable. Hey, how are you doing? Good. You. She nodded, shifting her basket from one arm to the other. I just want you to know, I told her she was making a mistake. I smiled. It's not a mistake if it's what she wanted. Yeah, but... Hannah trailed off. Never mind. Take care of yourself. I thought about that conversation while I finished shopping. Wondered what Hannah had wanted to say, but didn't. 2 months in, I got a text. Hey, how are you? Just those 4 words, but they made my stomach drop. I stared at my phone for a full minute before responding. I'm good. You. The dots appeared and disappeared 3 times before her response came through. Can we talk? We're talking now. I mean in person. I knew this was a bad idea. Knew it the same way you know that eating cold pizza for breakfast is a bad idea, but you do it anyway. When? Tomorrow? Coffee at that place we used to go to. Of course. Our place. Sure. 2 p.m. Perfect. See you then. I spent the next 24 hours trying not to overthink it. Failed completely. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at our usual table by the window. She looked different. Thinner maybe. Tired. Hi, she said as I sat down. Hi. We ordered our drinks in silence. The barista, who used to know our orders by heart, looked between us like he was watching a tennis match. When we finally sat down with our coffees, she spoke first. Thank you for coming. Sure. I've been wanting to reach out for a while now. I just didn't know if you'd want to hear from me. What did you want to talk about? She wrapped her hands around her cup. I wanted to tell you that you were right. About what? About everything. About me not knowing what I wanted. About running away instead of appreciating what I had. I took a sip of my coffee and waited. These past 2 months have been eye-opening, she continued. I quit my job. Started doing freelance work so I could have more flexibility. Went to Costa Rica for 3 weeks with Hannah. That sounds nice. It was everything I thought I wanted. But the whole time, something felt off. What do you mean? She looked down at her cup. I kept having all these experiences, seeing all these beautiful places, and my first thought was always, I wish he could see this. And then I'd remember that I'd left you specifically so I could do this alone. You wanted freedom, I said. You got it. But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like I'd cut off my own arm and then spent the whole trip wondering why everything felt wrong. I didn't say anything. I made a mistake, she said, meeting my eyes. Leaving you was a mistake. This life I thought I wanted. It doesn't mean anything without someone to share it with. Without you. And there it was. The moment I'd half expected, half dreaded. So what are you saying? I asked, echoing the question I'd asked 2 months ago. I'm saying I want to try again. I know I hurt you. I know I was selfish and stupid and I took you for granted. But I love you. I've always loved you. And I think we could make this work if we both tried. I sat back in my chair and looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman I'd spent 4 years with. Who I'd imagined a future with. Who'd looked me in the eye and told me our life together was too small. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. When did you decide this? That you wanted to come back? She seemed surprised by the question. I don't know. Gradually, I guess. What? Was it before or after Costa Rica? After. When I got back and realized that even with all that freedom, I was still thinking about you. I nodded slowly. So you tried the thing you said you needed to try? Took the trip, quit your job, did all the things you couldn't do because I was holding you back. And when you came home and the high wore off, you decided that maybe what we had wasn't so bad after all. She frowned. That's not fair, isn't it? You literally told me you felt like you were wasting your 20s with me. That I made it too easy to settle. Do you remember saying that? I do, and I was wrong. Were you? Or did you just realize that the grass isn't greener? What are you saying? I leaned forward. I'm saying that I spent 2 months dealing with the fact that the person I loved saw our relationship as a cage. That every moment we'd shared, every quiet Sunday morning, every inside joke, every plan we'd made, all of it was apparently settling to you. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you wanted to see what else was out there, and now that you've looked, you've decided I'm not the worst option after all. That's not love. That's convenience. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not true. I love you. You love the idea of not being alone, I said, not unkindly. There's a difference. How can you say that after everything we've been through? Because you already told me. You made it very clear that what we had wasn't enough. And the thing is, I actually appreciated your honesty. It hurt like hell, but at least it was honest. People make mistakes. People change their minds. You're right, they do. But here's what you don't seem to understand. When you left, you didn't just leave our relationship. You left me questioning everything. Every time I thought I was doing something right, being a good partner, building a good life, you were apparently feeling trapped. I took a breath. I've spent the last 2 months rebuilding my sense of self-worth. Remembering that there's nothing wrong with wanting a simple, stable life. That loving someone quietly and consistently isn't the same as being boring. I never said you were boring. You didn't have to. Too small. Settling. Wasting my 20s. Those words came from somewhere. She was crying now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what I was throwing away. And that's exactly my point, I said gently. You didn't realize because you didn't value it. Not really. You had to lose it to appreciate it, which means you didn't appreciate it when you had it. So that's it. You won't even consider trying again. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Could we go back? Could I trust her not to wake up one day and decide again that I wasn't enough? Let me ask you something else, I said. What's changed? Really changed, not just in your feelings, but in what you want from life. She wiped her eyes. What do you mean? You said you wanted to travel, to take risks, to live bigger. Did going to Costa Rica satisfy that? Or are you going to want to do it again in 6 months? A year? I don't know. Exactly. Because you haven't figured out what you actually want. You just know that being alone isn't as empowering as you thought it would be. That's not fair, she said again. Maybe not. But it's honest. Just like you were honest with me 2 months ago. We sat in silence for a moment. I thought you'd be happy, she said quietly. I thought you'd want this. Want us. I didn't want us. Past tense. But the us I wanted was the one where we were both all in. Where neither of us was wondering if there was something better out there. I'm all in now. Are you? Or are you just scared of being alone? She didn't answer. I finished my coffee and stood up. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. I really do. But it's not going to be with me. Not anymore. Please, she said. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did it 2 months ago. I'm just refusing to undo it. I left her there, walked out of the coffee shop, and didn't look back. My phone rang 3 times that evening. I didn't answer. She texted twice. I didn't respond. The next morning, I woke up to a long message. I know you probably won't read this, but I need to say it anyway. You're right about everything. I didn't value what we had until I lost it. I took you for granted. I thought that because you were steady and reliable and content with our life, that somehow meant what we had was less special than it was. I convinced myself that real love had to be dramatic and passionate and full of grand gestures. I didn't realize that the grand gesture was you showing up every single day, being exactly who you were, loving me exactly the way you did. I'm sorry I couldn't see that until it was too late. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough, because you were always more than enough. You were everything. I just didn't have the wisdom to recognize it. I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'll regret losing you for the rest of my life. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger or spite, but because I needed to move forward, and you can't move forward while holding on to the past. 3 months later, I was doing okay. Better than okay, actually. I'd started taking a woodworking class on Thursday nights. Met some interesting people. One of them, a woman named Ava, was funny and sharp and didn't seem to think that wanting a simple life was a character flaw. We'd gotten coffee a few times. Nothing serious, just talking and getting to know each other. She asked me once about my last relationship. It ended because we wanted different things, I told her. She needed to figure out what she wanted from life, and it turned out it wasn't me. Her loss, Ava said simply. Maybe, but it needed to happen. We weren't right for each other anymore. Are you over her? I thought about that. Yeah, I think I am. Not because I stopped caring, but because I started caring more about respecting myself. She nodded. That's a good answer. It was a good answer. It was also the truth. I heard through mutual friends that my ex had moved to Portland. Started fresh. Good for her, honestly. Maybe she found whatever it was she was looking for. Or maybe she didn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the farmer's market, the same one she used to complain about being too quaint, when I saw something that made me smile. A couple, probably in their 60s, walking hand in hand. They stopped at the flower stand, and he bought her a single sunflower. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just a simple gesture that made her face light up. That's what I wanted, I realized. Not the adventure of a lifetime or the passion that burns bright and fast. Just someone who'd appreciate the quiet moments. Who'd see the value in showing up, day after day, year after year. Someone who understood that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a sunflower at the farmer's market. I bought myself some fresh bread and headed home, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Found this recipe for homemade pasta. Want to come over and help me attempt it? Fair warning, I'm terrible at cooking. I smiled and typed back. I'll bring wine. See you at 7. Simple. Easy. No drama. Exactly what I needed. That evening, I stood in Ava's kitchen, flour everywhere, laughing as we tried to figure out why our pasta dough looked more like concrete than anything edible. I think we broke it, she said, poking at the gray mass. Definitely broke it. Want to just order pizza? Absolutely. We sat on her couch with pizza and wine, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her job as a veterinarian, about her family, about the time she accidentally adopted 3 cats because she couldn't choose just one. You just took all 3? I asked. They were siblings. I couldn't separate them. I laughed. That's actually kind of sweet. It's ridiculous. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 cats named Mo, Larry, and Qley. You named them after the 3 Stooges? They act like the 3 Stooges. It fit. It was easy being with her. Comfortable. There was no pressure to be anything other than who I was. Around midnight, as I was getting ready to leave, she walked me to the door. I had fun tonight, she said. Even though we failed at pasta. Especially because we failed at pasta. She smiled. Same time next week? I'll find another recipe for us to destroy. It's a date. I meant it casually, but the word hung in the air between us. Is it? She asked. A date. I looked at her, standing there in her apartment with the 3 cats watching us from various perches. Yeah, I said. If you want it to be. I do. Then it's a date. I drove home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope that things would go back to the way they were, but the quiet, steady hope that maybe things could be even better moving forward. A week later, I was at work when I got an email notification. A friend request on Facebook from my ex. I stared at it for a moment, then hit delete request. It wasn't about being petty or holding a grudge. It was about recognizing that some chapters are meant to stay closed. She'd made her choice. I'd made mine. And neither of us could go back and change that. David noticed me looking at my phone. Everything okay? Yeah, I said and meant it. Everything's good. How's it going with that vet? Ava. Really good, actually. We're taking it slow, but it feels right. He grinned. Look at you. Moving on like a functional adult. Shocking, I know. But it was true. I was moving on. Not because I was trying to forget what happened, but because I'd finally accepted it. My ex had needed to leave to find herself. And I needed her to leave to find myself too. To remember that I didn't need to change who I was to be worthy of love. That wanting a simple, stable life wasn't settling. It was choosing. Actively choosing peace over chaos, consistency over drama, quiet love over loud passion. And there was nothing wrong with that. 6 months after the coffee shop conversation, I ran into Hannah again. This time, I was with Ava. We'd just finished getting groceries and were loading them into my car when Hannah appeared. Hey, she said, looking between us. It's good to see you. You too. This is Ava. Nice to meet you. Ava said, shaking her hand. Hannah smiled, but it looked strained. I won't keep you. I just wanted to say, she asks about you sometimes. My friend. I nodded. How is she? She's okay. Still in Portland. She's seeing someone, actually. Good for her. Yeah. Hannah shifted uncomfortably. She wanted me to tell you, if I ever saw you, that she's sorry. For everything. You can tell her I said it's okay. Water under the bridge. Hannah looked like she wanted to say more, but Ava had smoothly started loading the last bags, giving us space, but also signaling that we needed to go. Take care of yourself, Hannah said. You too. In the car, Ava didn't ask questions right away. She just let me process. Finally, she said, X? Yeah. Want to talk about it? Not really. But thank you for asking. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Okay. That was it. No pushing, no prying, no insecurity about running into my past. Just understanding. That's when I knew. This was different. This was real. A year after my ex left, I moved into a new apartment. Bigger than the old one, in a better neighborhood. I could have afforded it before, but somehow I'd never suggested it. Maybe because some part of me had known she'd see it as me trying to keep up with what she wanted. But this wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. I hosted a housewarming party. Small, just close friends and Ava. David showed up with his wife and the sister he'd tried to set me up with a year ago. Look at this place, he said, whistling. Moving up in the world. Just wanted to change, I said. Good for you, man. You deserve it. Ava found me later in the evening, out on the balcony. Nice view, she said, coming to stand next to me. It's one of the reasons I took the place. I'm happy for you. This fresh start. I looked at her. It's not just a fresh start. It's the right start. She smiled. Feeling philosophical tonight. Maybe a little. I was just thinking about how different my life looks now compared to a year ago. Better. Different. But yeah, better. She leaned her head on my shoulder. For what it's worth, I'm glad things worked out the way they did. Even though I'm sure it didn't feel that way at the time. You're glad my relationship ended? I'm glad you were available when I met you. she corrected. Timing is everything. She was right. If my ex hadn't left, I would have stayed in that relationship. Maybe forever. Maybe we would have gotten married, had kids, built a whole life together. But I would have always wondered if she was going to wake up one day and decide it wasn't enough again. And that's no way to live. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is someone letting you go. Not because it doesn't hurt. It does. But because it forces you to rebuild yourself into someone stronger. Someone who knows their own worth. Someone who won't accept being treated as a backup plan. 2 years after the breakup, I proposed to Ava. Nothing fancy. Just us, hiking up to our favorite spot overlooking the city, with Mo, Larry, and Qley waiting at home. I know we said we'd take things slow, I said, getting down on one knee. But I'm tired of slow. I want to build a life with you. Not because I'm afraid of being alone or because you're convenient, but because every day with you feels right. Because you see me exactly as I am and you don't want me to be anything else. Because you make me want to be better without making me feel like I'm not enough. She was crying before I even finished. Is that a yes? I asked. Yes, you idiot. Of course it's a yes. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. No drama, no chaos, no second guessing. Just two people who knew what they wanted and chose each other every single day. On our wedding night, lying next to my wife, I thought about the conversation in the coffee shop. About how my ex had come back expecting me to take her back. How she'd been so sure that I'd been waiting for her, that I just needed her to realize what she'd lost. She'd been wrong. I hadn't been waiting. I'd been living. And in living, I'd found something better than what we'd had. Not because Ava was better than her as a person, but because what we had was built on mutual respect and appreciation. Neither of us was settling. Neither of us was holding the other back. We were choosing this life together, fully and completely. And that made all the difference. 3 years after the breakup, I heard through the grapevine that my ex had gotten engaged. I didn't feel anything particular about it. No jealousy, no regret, no relief. Just a distant sense of good for her. I hoped she'd found what she was looking for. I hoped he made her happy. I hoped she'd learned to appreciate what she had while she had it. But mostly, I just didn't think about it. Because my life had moved on so completely that she barely registered as a footnote. That's how I knew I was truly over it. Not because I hated her or wished her ill, but because I'd built something so good, so solid, so right that the past couldn't touch it. Ava asked me once if I ever thought about my ex. Sometimes, I admitted. Not often. Usually just when something reminds me of that time in my life. Do you regret how it ended? No. I regret how much of myself I lost trying to be what she needed. But the ending? That was necessary. Why? Because it taught me that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who sees loving me as settling. And because it led me to you. She kissed me. You're such a sap. You love it. I really do. And she did. I could see it in the way she looked at me, the way she laughed at my terrible jokes, the way she fought with me about whose turn it was to clean the litter boxes. Love isn't always fireworks and passion. Sometimes it's just someone who'll clean the litter boxes without being asked. Someone who'll bring you coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. Someone who'll hold your hand through the boring parts of life and make them feel special anyway. That's what my ex never understood. She was so focused on the idea of a big, exciting life that she couldn't see the beauty in the small moments. And by the time she realized what she'd lost, it was too late. Not because I was being spiteful or holding a grudge, but because I'd learned to value myself enough not to accept being someone's second choice. 5 years after the breakup, Ava and I had our first kid. A daughter with her mother's eyes and, according to everyone, my stubborn streak. Holding her for the first time, I thought about the life I'd imagined with my ex. The family we might have had. And I was grateful it hadn't worked out. Because this was right. This was where I was supposed to be. Not because it was fate or destiny or any of that, but because I'd made choices that led me here. Hard choices, painful choices, but the right choices. I'd chosen to let go when someone didn't value what we had. I'd chosen to rebuild myself instead of falling apart. I'd chosen to stay open to new possibilities instead of closing myself off. And those choices had led me to this moment. To this woman. To this child. To this life. A life that was simple in all the right ways. A life that was enough. Not because I'd lowered my standards or given up on excitement, but because I'd learned that the best life isn't the loudest or the most dramatic. It's the one where you wake up every morning next to someone who chooses you, just as much as you choose them. Where you build something together, brick by brick, day by day. where you don't need to prove anything to anyone because you're secure in what you have. That's what I'd been trying to tell my ex in the coffee shop all those years ago. That love shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't feel like sacrifice or compromise or settling. It should feel like coming home. And if it doesn't feel that way, then maybe it's not the right love. Maybe it's just familiar, comfortable, convenient, but not right. I'd rather be alone than settle for not right. And I'd rather wait for right than force wrong to work. My ex had accused me of not fighting for us. But the truth is, I'd been fighting for us every single day of our relationship. Fighting to be present, to be supportive, to build a life we could both be proud of. What she wanted wasn't a fight. It was a performance. She wanted me to prove that I couldn't live without her, to beg her to stay, to promise to change into someone different. But that's not love. That's manipulation. Real love doesn't need proof. It just is. And when it's not there anymore, no amount of fighting can bring it back. You can't convince someone to value you. You can only decide whether you're willing to stay with someone who doesn't. I'd made my decision, and I'd never regretted it. Not when she reached out. Not when I saw her friend. Not when I heard she'd gotten engaged. Not once. Because every single day since I'd walked out of that coffee shop, I'd been moving towards something better. Towards someone who saw my love for what it was. A gift, not a burden. Toward a life that felt right in my bones. Toward a future I'd chosen, not one I'd settled for. And that made all the difference. As I sat there, holding my daughter, watching my wife sleep in the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, I felt a peace I'd never known before. This was what I'd been building toward. Not this specific moment, but this feeling. The feeling of being exactly where I was supposed to be. Of having made the hard choices and come out the other side. Of knowing that I hadn't given up on love when my ex left. I'd just stopped accepting less than I deserved. And in doing so, I'd found more than I'd ever imagined. My daughter stirred in my arms, and I looked down at her perfect, tiny face. "Welcome to the world, kid," I whispered. "You're going to love it here." And I meant it. Because the world I was bringing her into wasn't perfect. It wasn't always exciting. It wasn't the stuff of movies or romance novels. But it was real. It was honest. It was full of people who showed up for each other. And that was more than enough. It was everything.